Good day, folks, and welcome to today's session, Emerging Trends and the Formula for Creating an Effective Digital Workplace. My name is Rob Ryan, Head of Product Marketing and Business Value for Workgrid Software, and I'm delighted you decided to join our session. Today, we'll be focused on the trends and patterns we see impacting the digital workplace, employee engagement, and employee experience as of late. We'll discuss what this means for business and application leaders to make the most of their investments. We'll also be taking a deep dive into how you can best leverage technology as a catalyst for transforming your programs, specifically around the employee experience. Now, we're going to jump right into our session topic today. However, before we discuss trends and recommendations, it's best we start with some ground rules of understanding of what the employee experience is and how it differs from employee engagement. And I love this quote from an old radio personality. What's going on the inside shows on the outside. Because this will hold true for both EX and engagement, but from different vantage points. First, let's discuss employee engagement. It's defined as the emotional state where we feel passionate, energetic, committed towards our work. In turn, we end up fully investing our best selves, our hearts, minds, hands, into the work that we do. Where does this arise from? Well, in truth, engagement is ultimately driven by classic intrinsic drivers, and these were eloquently captured years back by Professor Daniel Pink and others, that there's three key factors which help to foster engagement and ultimately drive. First, mastery, the freedom to grow within one's role. You're not performing daily or mundane tasks below your abilities. You can enter their long-standing state of flow, which allows you to progress on your own professional track over time with just the right amount of reach. Next is autonomy. Many of us know what it's like to work for micromanagers, and rarely is that the preferred working model, especially for highly driven individuals. Autonomy is the feeling your employees have in owning and charting their day. The last intrinsic element is purpose. The work that is being performed is impacting something greater than myself, something more than just simply dollars and cents. Now, you'll notice it's not what you can get historically told. If I do X, I get Y. Your classic extrinsic carrots and sticks. And I'm sure if you look back on your own career, you'll see those times of spot increases or marginal bonuses didn't necessarily inspire true engagement. There's an important caveat here that we should note that, of course, compensation must be in line for market rates to move the needle on mastery, autonomy, and purpose, as well as security. Key factor if employees are going to be engaged within their work. If employees are thinking about the next round of layoffs, and you can forget about high employee engagement. So take those off the table. You can start to begin to layer in those ability to focus on mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Another thing to keep in mind is employee engagement is oftentimes confused with tactics. Jeans on Friday, cupcakes on Tuesday. Those are great perks, helps with employee happiness scores, but won't necessarily progress or foster engagement within the workplace. Now, what about the employee experience? Well, it's not just another new name for employee engagement. EX defines a monumental shift in the attitudes and differences in employee expectations. It emphasizes how the workplace should work, the tools, the experience initiatives, the process that shape the reality of the day. And it rose out of a drive over the last 10 years of a customer experience focus and the rapid pace of consumer-grade solutions and experiences through the purchase cycle. In addition, EX begins to consider that shift of employee feedback, moving away from your once-a-year ENSPS scores and focusing on how the reality of the employee situation looks. Simply put, looking through the lens from their perspective. Like employee engagement, EX is not tactics. It's not your sleep pods, your wellness care packages, your team Zoom-free Fridays, or even a single piece of technology like the intranet. Not one lever does a great employee experience make. So with this understanding on engagement in EX, we're going to dive into some of those trends and recommendations where you can begin to leverage your digital workplace to accelerate on both engagement as well as the experience. The first trend to note, and this one is certainly the most obvious, the pandemic drove a significant amount of digital as well as business transformation, which caught many organizations off guard. Just as Microsoft reported in their third quarter earnings call that a year's worth of digital transformation accelerated due to this outlier event. And to be blunt, there's really no going back to the pre-pandemic workplace. As we all know, organizations and employees had no choice but to adapt and investigate a digital-first strategy. Yet with all the pain which comes of growing, many organizations have reported successfully implementing that year's worth of digital transformation plans. Now, the trends have also focused on three key areas. The first being operations. The pandemic amplified the importance and need of a digital workplace, and certainly in the understanding what it means for each respective organization, but also how the employee experience begins to play a role across the technical landscape. Alignment has been another key area. Employees no longer connecting physically, that ability to learn tacitly, frontline workers being even more disconnected than ever before, the understanding of the organization's mission, objective, key news updates, information, especially where timely information is critical, has accentuated as a driver within these new class of digital workplaces, coupled with the focus on EX. The last leg of the digital-first strategy being considered is resiliency. This may not be the only pandemic or event that upends the world, but it has shaped the requirements for increasing digital dexterity. If the world can shift on a dime to maintain alignment, operations, and engagement, then successful businesses need to adopt a digital-first approach. We can be remote, connected, and culturally attuned for the work ahead. So let's take a look about the cultural side of things. With this long-standing change, expectations have started to shift a bit. And as reported by Gallup, at its height, 70% of employees were working from home about a year ago, with 33% of workers remaining fully remote today. What's interesting is that employee expectations have shifted dramatically over the last year. And as data points suggest, this has impacted perceptions as well as expectations. Here in the U.S. Workplace Survey from Gensler, August 2020, 52% of those surveys were working from home, with an additional 11% going in 1 or 2 days per week. This was assessed with an ideal scenario where over half of U.S. workers prefer more hybrid model. And if we look at some of the recent headlines as of late, companies like Ford Motors recently informed 30,000 workers that they can work from home indefinitely. What's interesting with these trends is the shift in desire of new working models. Employees who have worked at home for long stretches are demanding to continue to work from home as they see the benefits of better work-life balance. If you live in a high-traffic suburb, not spending 2.5 hours a day, 10 hours a week of your life commuting doesn't look half bad. The bottom line, remote workers have increasingly separated into two distinct groups: those ready to head back to the workplace when given the chance, and those who would continue working remotely as much as possible. So there's no doubt this will begin to shape expectations as well as become a perk and attractor in the war for talent in the future. But what does that mean to your tech stack? Well, now with the impact of the pandemic and the shift of employee expectations, we're facing large complexity as it relates to the digital workplace and how that drives the employee experience. And make no mistake, most SaaS vendors are in the game of maximizing the utilization of their technology for consumption and activity. And it's partially the engagement and attention economy we find in social media, but within the enterprise. Is it right for the employee and the organization? If today's workplace, you're ping-ponging throughout your day across 30-plus applications, time isn't necessarily well spent. No wonder everything continues to happen via email. The pandemic also drove an increase in the complexity of the digital workplace, as tools were thrown into the workplace to solve for connectivity and collaboration challenges more and more. Tool confusion accelerated. Workers waste 32 days a year to the Complexity of Workplace Act. From Ring Central, a report that 53% of workers have said They would rather do their household chores than navigating between their applications. And as you look at some of those challenges, what are some of the symptoms that you see? As you begin to take a look at the technical landscape, there's really no rationale or prioritization happening. And with that, overall use and utility decreases. So, how would you know if you're faced with these challenges? Well, there'll be signs. One, important communications will go unseen and be missed, especially if communications increase across multiple channels, email, Slack, etc. There's going to be difficulty in separating signal and noise from the end user's perspective. Delayed approvals. With the noise and clutter, approvals get lost, they go incomplete, or perhaps they're just missed entirely, especially for managers. And with that overhead of systems comes cognitive overload, as well as too many login screens. And there's far too many steps and transactions to really be productive within your day. Now, this creates a number of downstream effects. Time is certainly wasted as you continuously switch between multiple applications, trying to find that one bit of information or take action from user input. And as business lines focus on their own individual solutions rather than an employee-centric holistic experience, IT and others receive poor reputation score in terms of management of the overall tech stack. Truly critical information ends up being lost within the day, and that information is not going to be found readily and easily. And ultimately, this drives a poor use of technology as well as understanding of the employee experience. Engagement goes down, productivity and time is certainly not well spent. So our last trend we're going to take a look at is related to the prior with a bit of hope. With the impact of the pandemic, the rise of digital-first strategies, understanding that this has created a bit of chaos in the day, expectations of employees with remote working models, cutting-edge organizations are realizing they need to begin to focus on employee experience as a whole. Prior to the pandemic, the relation of EX was more coupled with CX, knowing that to define a great customer experience ends up impacting the bottom line. Thus, employee experience must be considered first to truly transform the business. Those organizations that did focus on EX charters and programs saw an increase of showing how engagement can be fostered within the organization and increase in the bottom line. The results show on the balance sheet. Better yet, organizations attuned to their employees see the results with both retention and attraction of top talent. Now, one topic being discussed more and more are moments that matter, a term which Gartner has begun to further define as instants which impact employees and their organizational experience. What's of note here is that moments that matter are quite different from one organization to another, even from region to region or generation to generation. The moments that matter for your organization may look quite different to another. Coupled with moments that matter is a focus on more holistic approach to the employee lifecycle, understanding the touch points of where the digital workplace can be woven into the fabric of the employee journey, ultimately driving a greater experience as well as engagement. Now, let's get into how we can begin to address some of these trends with some recommendations on developing that EX strategy within the digital workplace. The first place we'll start is by really understanding where you are in your digital workplace journey. If we look across the last 20 years or so, we can see an evolution in the way in which employees accessed and engaged with technology within the workplace. From the static intranets of the early 2000s, which were link farms and highly manual updates being passed through centralized intranet teams, to the rise of Enterprise 2.0, social business, social intranet around 2010, that had more federated governance model, ownership going back into the business. Collaboration features began to rise, and employee social networking began to sit either coupled with the internet or aside. To the digital workplace in 2017, which arguably a more connected enterprise, layering greater demands for mobile, social, personalized, and local information. Now, each era doesn't replace the previous one before. It builds upon it and hopefully evolves. Or that's really the hope. The intelligent workplace will make a sense of the technology landscape, streamline the experience, and connect from the previous eras. It really simplifies the employees' lives and provides them with an enjoyable experience. Now, to understand where you are, it's best to really take that step back. Identifying where you are today in your digital workplace evolution, understanding what levers you could begin to move, reviewing that alignment of your digital workplace, its current implementation, and does it connect to your vision, mission, and objectives from its original goals to your current business objectives? Also, taking a step to understand the opportunities for growth. What's possible? Where could we begin to leverage the digital workplace as a much more accelerated experience for productivity and action? Where can it make the greatest impact? As well, addressing the areas of your digital workplace that require immediate attention. We here at Workgrid, we have our digital workplace maturity model, which helps us guide our clients in their path. And there's many models out there like that. One last thing not to forget is your digital workplace governance and program strategy. These may be dusty, they perhaps haven't been looked at in a while. Seeing where your governance model stands, the roadmap to layer in additional use and utility, those can be good places to begin your journey. You can also start with the quick win, really understanding the employee's top pain points as you start to revitalize those digital transformation efforts. Looking at legacy systems, where you can begin to modernize those interactions and streamline complex employee processes. It can extend into HR, finance, even your ERP. Also, looking at a more outcome-driven design as a whole can help to bridge the gap of creating that better employee experience, looking at it from the employee's intent and outcome. Also, multi-channel delivery is another key factor to begin to modernize that experience. Mobile experience, for example, as workers are on the go, being able to access quick key information or even inputs for approvals, transactions, tasks can be quick wins. Next recommendation is looking at the employee lifecycle as a whole to build out that experience that's attuned to your org. Now, there's many opportunities to consider across the employee journey, from the number of apps that they may interact with within the pre-hire stage, the average is 7, to smoothing those opportunities of onboarding to development, engagement, and even offboarding. Let's look at onboarding. A classic use case many of our customers begin to address with Workgrid. Onboarding, quite oftentimes, can be chaotic. It classically consists of inputs across various corporate functions and individual lines for awareness, action, and compliance. From HR, receiving new policies, handbooks, forms, to IT for policy signups, compliance attestations, to your department on role-specific action items, news, information. You can't forget your manager. Now, this bucket of tasks begins to grow over time, which ends up, of course, becoming part of your onboarding experience. And oftentimes, it's poorly managed and poorly structured. There's a better way, where the employee is really focused on their time, their stage, and growth within the organization. Workgrid clients have taken advantage of being able to craft an experience on the tasks that are needed first day, first week, month, and so on, allowing for that experience to be right-sized to the individual. We discussed the rising trend of moments that matter. Let's look at where we can make an impact. The first step is to understand which moments impact your employees the most. These can be uncovered and captured via deep dives, focus group sessions, employee-based storytelling, and reports. Common patterns will arise through those efforts, and you may uncover that it's onboarding, mobility, talent and development, benefit selection, perhaps even your D&I efforts. All can be addressed in a coherent and optimized manner. Critical to note is you begin to take action, communication changes should be addressed. Now, where do we go through and start to layer this into the digital employee experience in Digital Assistant? You can focus on enabling those experiences centered around the employee needs. Employees can be empowered with the use of their digital assistant that integrates across disparate systems in an approach that delivers personalized and contextualized information based on what's important to them, increasing their ability to focus on their high-value work, as well as engaging and fulfilling that EX you're looking to drive. A quick way to begin to gather information can be from pulse checks or user inputs, not just simply binary yes-no answers, but capturing the stories that employees remember and then addressing them. For example, if benefits election or parental leave arise as a moment that's quite significant within your org, going that step further to really understand why, and then creating an ease of access, understanding the options in detail, or perhaps action points for those moments can help to bridge the gap between the moments that matter and where the employee experience can begin to take a role. There's plenty of opportunity to capture those feedback loops as well to help provide that information and actions on behalf of the end user. Now, earlier, we discussed the trend of the increasing chaos within the digital workplace and the symptoms which indicate this ailment. Let's dig into the ways to mitigate these troubles and take control of that noise. One common missing ingredient, failing to deliver an experience-first approach, is the opportunity where you can begin to weave into the technical landscape a layer that prioritizes the information, notifications, actions, and access point, regardless of where they live within your tech stack. You see, most applications tend to be walled gardens of utility, chirping away at the user to come back and take action. And of course, some of the more intrusive or troublesome apps take more of our attention away and thus interrupt us and decrease their value. But what most applications miss out on is taking an employee-centric approach, delivering to the user what they actually need. Amplifying a digital workplace or intranet with an experience layer or digital assistant can provide that intelligence fabric to prioritize the interactions an employee can take and focus on what's most useful to them. Let's dig into a few of these. With Workgrid, our customers often speak to the ability to augment the digital workplace experience by elevating the most important signals and notifications from outside the intranet, even if those happen to be on-prem. For example, providing an ease of access to quickly transact on workflows, tasks, approval of employees' expenses, procurement requests, timesheet approvals, shift swaps, submissions. This can also be leveraged to highlight the things to know, key news, information, drive eyes and awareness to those key alerts and outages and changes happening within the workplace, or even creating quick access points to people, resources, and information. Another long pole use case our customers take advantage of is individual items of interest, the powerful elements that bridge work and home, namely my view of pay, benefits, time off, especially powerful for those hourly workers who are more accustomed to checking their pay regularly. PTO is an item oftentimes associated and accessed as folks begin to understand their accrual. These can be table stakes for the bridge of the I and myself within the workplace. But these key pieces of individual information, important to the employee, my profile, my technical assets, those can be coupled with team-focused items for sales metrics, scores, scheduling, and more. Now, let's look at a true outcome-driven design within the digital workplace. We'll take Jane here. She wants to use some of her well-earned PTO for a trip to Cabo. Now, this typical process is Jane logging into various systems, tools, and applications for her to ultimately reach her destination. She's having to request time off via her HCM, have it approved. She may have to move through various tools and channels to ensure that the organization is fully aware of her absence. And frankly, this is painful and unproductive. The process of having to move through multiple tasks and tools for one outcome is a burden. So there's a better way. Jane could schedule her time away through one single input that allows her to trigger a downstream effect for her time away to be submitted, approved, and ultimately creating a domino effect, which allows her to get back to work. Her time is booked, it's approved, her channels are now updated and aware, and her clients are notified via her out of office. So in closing, we all know the world has changed, but people certainly have not. And if we take a step back, understand the workplace and the workday as it appears to our employees, remove a bit of the chaos from their day, and provide them with the means to do their best work, we can create a digital workplace that fosters the type of employee engagement we all want. Modern, personalized, and human-centric. Again, thank you for your time today. Hope we can connect in the future.